It began with an email, one I almost deleted without reading. Invitation to speak at KFS Institute. The subject line read, I was a guest lecturer in folklore and supernatural beliefs, often traveling to obscure towns and rural colleges. KFS or Carbonfield Seminary wasn't on any academic list I'd ever seen, but curiosity got the better of me. Their email was formal but strange. No department head name, no phone number, just a location pinned on a map in the middle of deep woods in Oregon. I Googled it, but nothing solid came up. Just a mention in an old web forum discussing abandoned religious institutions. That should have been enough to turn me away. Still, the idea of an untouched place, possibly hiding stories and secrets, intrigued me. I replied with a tentative yes. The drive took hours through increasingly narrow roads. The sun was sinking fast, and a thick fog swallowed the forest. My GPS went blank. When I finally saw the rusted iron gate marked KFS, my phone had no signal. Behind the gate, the building loomed, a massive, decaying stone structure with ivy creeping up its sides. Windows gaped like empty eye sockets. I knocked on the heavy wooden door. It opened with a loud creak, revealing an old man in a faded suit. You're expected, he said simply, turning and walking down a dimly lit hall without waiting for a reply. I stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind me. The air was cold, heavy. As I followed him deeper into the shadows of the old seminary, something gnawed at my gut. I didn't know it then, but I had already crossed a line I could never uncross. The hallway stretched on like a tunnel, the flickering gaslights casting warped shadows that danced along the cracked stone walls. My footsteps echoed unnaturally, as if the building was breathing them in. The old man, who hadn't given me his name, moved silently ahead, never once looking back. We passed faded portraits of long-dead clergy, their eyes seeming to follow me with suspicion or warning. He finally stopped outside a heavy oak door and gestured for me to enter. Your room, he said. You will speak in the chapel at midnight. Midnight? I asked, confused. Isn't that a bit unusual? He only nodded and walked away, his footsteps vanishing quicker than they should have. The room was sparse. A bed, a desk, a bookshelf filled with crumbling tomes, and an antique lamp that buzzed faintly. There was no cell signal, no Wi-Fi, and outside, the forest pressed against the foggy windows like a living thing. I unpacked my notes, trying to ignore the strange timing of the lecture. As I settled in, I heard it, soft murmurs, like someone whispering through the walls. I paused. The air stilled, and silence returned. Then, again low and urgent, voices hissing words I couldn't quite catch. I pressed my ear to the wall. The whisper stopped, followed by a soft knock from the other side. I yanked the door open. The hallway was empty. I told myself it was the wind. Old buildings do strange things. But I locked the door that night. Still, I didn't sleep. The whispers came again, clearer this time. A woman's voice. They never left. That was the first time I felt it, the sense that I wasn't alone in that room, and that whoever or whatever was with me had been waiting a very long time. I sat in my room, trying to piece together what had just happened. The air felt heavier, thicker, like something was closing in on me. I kept replaying the old man's words in my mind. You came willingly, as they all must. What had he meant by that? And those whispers, those hissing voices that seemed to crawl under my skin. They had been real, and they hadn't stopped. Even now, I could hear them faintly, like the faintest of whispers at the edge of my consciousness. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but I couldn't. Not yet. I pulled the old book from the shelf and started reading it in the dim light. The words blurred on the pages, but one phrase stood out. When the gate opens, the ones who enter will never leave. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Was that what they had meant? Was I already trapped? A sudden knocking at the door broke my thoughts. I stood frozen for a moment. No one had knocked all night. I opened it cautiously. It was the old man again. His face was pale, his eyes wide and unblinking. Midnight approaches, he said softly. The ceremony cannot begin without you. Without a word, I followed him down the same dark hall, each step taking me further away from the safety of my room. The air grew colder with every turn, and soon the silence around us was deafening. We reached the chapel doors, which creaked open as if they had been waiting for us. Inside, the room was dimly lit, save for a single candle burning at the altar. Figures in dark robes stood in a circle, their faces hidden in shadow. And at the center of the altar, a figure, motionless, as though it had been waiting for me. I wanted to run, but my legs felt like stone. I was rooted to the spot. "Join us," the old man whispered, as the others began chanting in unison. I had walked into this place seeking answers. But now I realized too late that I had been invited into something far darker than I could ever imagine. I stumbled blindly through the narrow passage, the torchlight throwing frantic shadows across the damp stone walls. The chanting grew louder as I descended, each step taking me deeper into the bowels of KFS. The air thickened with moisture and something else, something metallic and foul. The whispers had evolved into voices now, layered and rhythmic, speaking in a language I couldn't recognize. At the bottom of the stairs, I reached a massive underground chamber. The sight froze the breath in my lungs. Dozens of robed figures stood in a circle, surrounding what looked like a stone altar. Upon it lay a body, still, pale, and unmistakably human. Candles flickered in jagged alcoves, their flames barely lighting the carvings etched into the stone walls, symbols of agony, of sacrifice. I stepped backward, but my foot struck a loose pebble, sending it skittering. Every head turned toward me at once. The old man emerged from the circle, his eyes hollow and glowing faintly in the dark. "You came willingly," he said, smiling coldly. "As they all must." I shook my head, my voice cracking. "What is this? What are you doing here?" "This is not a seminary," he said. "It never was. KFS is a vessel, a gate. Every 40 years, we must offer one who walks in of their own free will, one touched by stories, a teller, a believer." The others began to chant again, louder now. The walls seemed to pulse, the floor vibrating beneath my feet. Shadows stretched toward me, too long, too fluid to be human. I ran. I don't remember how I found the exit tunnel. I only remember the screams, both theirs and my own, as I scrambled into the darkness, chased by something I dared not look back to see. I don't remember the drive back. I only know I ran until the trees thinned, until the fog lifted, and until dawn finally broke. My car was parked just beyond the gate, untouched, as if I had imagined everything. I drove for hours, refusing to stop until I reached a gas station in the next town. I tried to tell someone, anyone, but the words came out jumbled, frantic, and unbelievable. When I looked up KFS again, it had vanished from every map. No trace of the email, the invitation, or even the road I'd taken remained. The locals only shook their heads when I asked about Carbon Field Seminary. "That place burned down in the 70s, one man muttered. "Everyone died. But I didn't imagine it. I couldn't have. Because the whispers didn't stay behind. Even now, years later, I hear them sometimes when I'm alone, when the house is quiet, when I least expect it. A woman's voice, soft and close. They never left. And then others, murmuring in languages I've never studied, creeping into my dreams and pulling me back to that underground chamber. I wake up breathless, my hands stained with dirt, my ears ringing with chants. I stopped teaching. I left the field entirely. The stories became too real, too dangerous. Sometimes I wonder if KFS chose me long before I ever received that email. If it knew I'd be curious. If it waited for someone like me, someone who believed in the strange and unexplained. I still have nightmares about that altar, about the eyes in the dark. And every time I pass a mirror, I feel like I'm being watched not from behind me, but from within it. The worst part? I don't think I ever really escaped.